And welcome back to Beerfield Fantasy Football, guys. We are through a very, very, very weird Week 14.
We're not through. We got one game left with a lot of implications on the line.
By the time most people listen to this, we'll be through a very, very, very weird Week 14. All right, we are Beerfield Fantasy Football. We're going to crack a beer, get through this very odd week. We got some injuries to talk about, some breaking news, recap all the games that happened on Sunday. Some of them were fun. Some of them were very, very strange. We'll get you through all that, try to help you guys get set for Week 15, try to inch you closer to that fantasy championship. You can follow us at BeerfieldFF on Twitter, Instagram, and Untapped if you're looking for us there. Beerfield Fantasy Football if you want to be able to jump on the show and ask us live questions. We live stream all these episodes and do a special Sunday morning episode as well if you're catching the show new here at the end of the season. Individually, I got Dan Third to my right.
With some breaking news, Doug Baldwin is inactive against the Vikings tonight.
Ooh.
At 30 BFF with 2 Fs.
Are the rest of the inactives listed yet?
No, it's just that one. That one just got announced on Sleeper, so
That hurts me because I'm facing David Moore with a 15-point lead in the league. So
and no Trey
That
Waynes.
means I need Nick Bennett if he's playing.
all right, and then we got Christopher Hopper, who you can hear his smooth voice down there from St. Louis.
BFF with UP is currently freaking out because I got to switch Doug Baldwin for Nick Bennett and SFB8 lineup.
Wish you luck with that.
And hopefully nowhere else, but I gotta go do a fire check right now.
I think I saw somewhere on Twitter that the net sees like 20% more targets with Baldwin out, something like that.
So
Hopefully that helps.
Hopefully you guys are catching this live, so you got that news. If you're listening to the podcast and you had him in your lineup, I'm sorry. You should listen to the stream next time.
You should watch us live in all of our gloriness.
And I'm at Nick Sparts. If you want to support the show in any way, a couple ways you can do that. Drop reviews on iTunes, gives us likes and comments on YouTube. That helps promote the videos there. Or DM me at BeerfieldFF or email at beerfieldfantasy@gmail.com. And I can let you know how to support us via our Patreon by sending us beer or picking up Beerfield Fantasy-based merchandise. Before we go ahead and get through all the news, the game recaps, injuries, waivers, cuts for your team that we learned out of Week 14, we got to go let you know what is fueling us on today's episode. And it's been a while since we've had one of my favorite of all-time breweries on. Minnesota's own Surly Brewing Company's back with Abrasive. Fourth time we've had them on the show, but it's been about a year since we last had them on. It's a 9.2% double IPA. Give you a full review of that once we're through recapping the noon games.
Has it been since the Darkness we've had them on?
Surly Darkness was the last one we had on because we had Todd the Axemen. We had their Oktoberfest last year. And we had the Darkness. We haven't had them on since almost a year.
Wow. Okay.
For news up first, Raiders fired GM Reggie McKenzie. Not a real big shock. This has turned into Gruden's show, and no real need for any of the old hands to stick around anymore.
Nope.
All right. Anything real big takeaways for this, or just assume Gruden's just going to keep doing what Gruden's done?
We're not going to really know how this is all going to shape out for another probably 2 to 3 years as Gruden gets his guys in, gets his players in, and then we'll know more from there.
All right, and then up next, we've got the Eagles have signed running back Boston Scott off the Saints practice squad.
Sneaky sniding. I don't see, barring more injuries, that this makes sense. But I was a fan of Scott.
Well, they lost Clement.
Well, I know, but he still's got to go through Smallwood. He still's got to go through Sproles. He still has to go through Josh Adams.
So
And
maybe
even
more
crack the
interesting for
lineup.
Dynasty since you figure Sproles won't be there next year.
Yeah, if they decide not to go after a bigger name in free agency, as this draft class isn't supposed to have as deep of a running back class the last couple of years.
All right, we have one skill player declaring, and that is Antoine Wesley, wide receiver out of Texas Tech. I wasn't able to find an age on him with a quick cursory search. Usually I have to work on that more in the offseason once people start compiling that information.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to find the age of college players. I've noticed over the years of putting the spreadsheets and stuff together. And I say years, I mean like last year.
Yeah, it's kind of, you'd figure that with how obsessed people have gotten with especially like high school scouting and stuff, that information would be readily available, but it's really not.
You got to like find articles about them in high school that kind of give a birth date by accident.
Yeah,
it's like, huh, okay.
And you can kind of piece it together.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's outside of the just top tier prospects this early, they just don't have ages listed.
No.
All right, that's all I've got for news. It's kind of a light episode. Let's go ahead and jump into what the hell happened, and a very appropriate thing for what we saw this week.
What the hell happened?
And kicking us off first, we've got Ravens going into Kansas City to play the Chiefs. Chiefs win this one 27-24 in overtime. Any major takeaways from this one, Dan, outside of it? This one, probably one of the better games we saw.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of good that I worked yesterday and I didn't get to watch some of these games. This one I would have loved to watch, though. We'll start with the Ravens here. Jackson put together his best passing day, even though it's not really saying much. 147 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, but he did lose a fumble again. Also added 71 rushing yards, making it, I believe, a 4 straight with at least 70 rushing yards since taking over. As long as Flacco isn't flirting with the starting lineup or being flirted with to get some more playing time, Jackson should be a mid to low QB1 for his last 2 games of the fantasy season. The running game was on fire here. Dixon did get the touchdown to piss off Gus Edwards' owners, but Edwards still finished 16 for 67 on the ground. But with the mixture of Dixon and with John Harbaugh coming out and saying that he wants to get Dixon more touches, I think this bumps Edwards down to more of a flex play than a high RB2.
Has there been a more frustrating running game to be after this season than the Ravens? Because it's like been in waves. It's like, all right, yeah, I got Buck Allen. Oh, he's no more. Oh, I've got Alex Collins. Oh, he's gone. Yeah, I got Edwards. Finally the guy. Here comes Kenneth Dixon.
I don't think there is. Maybe Philly.
Yeah, Philly was
around that mid-season with the same reasons. And I guess maybe the Jets with all their on and off injuries.
Yeah, Jets have been also a nightmare. Only other one might be like the 49ers just because they all keep dying.
We just got dark there.
Not literally, of course.
Yes, f80 dying.
And then moving on here, Kenneth Dixon, 9 touches for 71 total, for 80 total yards and that touchdown that he got. As I said here, he's going to start getting more touches. Tymont, though, is droppable. 3 touches in what should have been his best matchup in terms of game script.
Yeah, Dixon's taking the pass catching works, it looks like.
Yeah, and I kind of saw this. I thought maybe Tymont, who's I thought would be the best pass catcher amongst the 3, would have held this role, but Dixon's just a more balanced running back, and that kind of gives him more of an option and read option plays.
Especially with Jackson under center, I think it's an advantage to them to have Dixon out there because it doesn't scream we're passing the ball.
But that also speaks to Gus Edwards. I mean, he doesn't get any work in the passing game. Dixon would just make the team better as a whole if they're going to continue to go on this direction. Yeah, which I expect to actually happen, especially against the Bucks next week in a very plus matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on to the receivers here is still a massive mess. Snead led the team in targets, catches, and yards. Brown and Crabtree are both touchdown dependent, and Snead doesn't have a high enough floor that we can trust to be considered a safe flex option. I believe Brown got the touchdown. Saw 6 targets, but he doesn't really get a lot of production out of him. Crabtree's been the most consistent, but that's 3 to 5 targets a game. And I don't think he's posted 50 yards with Jackson taking over. So all 3 of these guys I am more than willing to drop in redraft leagues. Tight ends, again, are a massive mess. Max Williams decided to stop playing fullback and start playing tight end. Caught a touchdown. Mark Andrews, who's kind of been the guy here, only got 2 targets. Both Boyle and Hurst didn't see anything. So, again, tight ends aren't worth much. The defense wasn't as bad as expected in this game. One interception, 3 sacks, 27 points allowed. They got a boom bust game against the Bucks at home. I think it's more boom than bust in this, and then you can safely drop them again after that as they face the Chargers on the road. As for the Chiefs here, Mahomes was his usual self. 377 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception on 53 attempts. Chargers and Seahawks help finish up his fantasy season. It looks like Hill is a true time game decision, though as the day went along, it became more that he's going to play Thursday night, but that is definitely something that you need to watch, as he's been one of his top 2 pass catchers there. Either way, though, he's still a must start. But just keep in mind the Chargers and Seahawks, as of right now, are 2 top 10 pass defenses against fantasy quarterbacks. As for the running game here, Williams still wears touchdown on the running game. I think it was on the 1 yard line. But Ware still had a decent day himself, 20 touches, 129 yards. If he's healthy, he's got 2 really good matchups left here against the Chargers and Seattle, who have both been pretty light against running backs, especially as of recently. But Williams is still a name to know, as these could be 2 teams that you can still throw on with the running game. And but Ware should be as the true RB2 here in this, or should be considered an RB2 in this offense. He finished, I believe, with 20 touches compared to Williams' 12. So, and Williams didn't really do much with his production, just 30 yards.
Mm-hmm.
But he gets Damien does get some flex value in deeper leagues as this offense moves. As for the receiving game here, Hill should be fine. It looks like he was great against the Ravens, 139 on 14 targets. Just keep up with the news on him.
He should be fine.
This is a short week.
They're expecting 0 issues.
Yeah. Demarcus Robinson was the number 2 here in this game, not Chris Conley. I believe he went, I think he had 6 or 7 targets for some stuff. Donnelly dudded in this game. Not really surprised here, as the Ravens are really good against receivers for the most part. Kelsey 7 for 77, 1 touchdown on 9 targets. Defense was all right. Forced 3 sacks, had a fumble recovery, but they can be dropped now with the Chargers and Seahawks up next.
All right. Jumping over to Panthers, playing the Browns. Browns pull the upset, winning 26-20 in Carolina. Panthers have lost, 6 in a row now?
It's been bad.
Wow.
Very, very bad.
Hopper, any major takeaways from this one?
Yep, we're going to go ahead and start with the Panthers. This is the normal we start with the road team here. Cam Newton had his second pretty bad game in a row. No touchdowns, just 1 pick in this one. Only 23 rush yards on 5 attempts. CMC handled the majority of the scoring, but it's their second straight bad game. Cam's second straight bad game after being very good all season. The Saints and the Falcons to end the season, or in the fantasy season. So 1 bad matchup, 1 pretty good matchup for Cam left.
Mm-hmm.
Christian McCaffrey was fantastic again. 101 scrimmage yards, 2 touchdowns, both of those rushing. He's got multiple touchdowns in all but 2 games since week 8. He's also been over 100 scrimmage yards in every game since then. The problem really hasn't been the offense because of the slide. It's been the defense, and CMC has been absolutely fantastic, especially over the back half of the year. DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel both saw 8 targets to lead the wide receivers. Samuel had 80 yards on his, Moore just 67. Both are wide receiver 3s with some upside rest of the season, in my opinion. Funchess accomplished nothing on 3 targets. So I think he's the 3 or 4, actually about the 4th option on this team, probably 5th.
He's 4th in snaps amongst just receivers. So yeah, he is
that's not even counting McCaffrey and Thomas.
Yeah, he is.
Right.
He's buried.
Yeah, they're getting ready to move on from him in the offseason, which is great news for anyone who owns David Moore or Curtis Samuel.
You mean DJ Moore?
DJ Moore, sorry.
As for the tight ends, Ian Thomas was fantastic. Got 9-11 for 77 targets, had about 77 yards, and really goals. So he had an absolutely fantastic game. He picked up where he left off in relief last season. Wilson does decide to retire. Ian Thomas is going to slide right in there with that same volume, the same type of workload. He was a good pass catcher in college. I expect him to continue to be a startable tight end rest of the season.
Yep. The only other thing I'd really like to see develop from him is him become more of a red zone weapon. A lot of his work's been between the 20s.
Yep, I agree with that. On to the Browns. Baker Mayfield wasn't the high-end play we were hoping for.
It is still an okay scream. Passed just 22 times, but turned that into 238 yards and a touchdown. So it didn't kill you, but it wasn't great either. Nick Chubb was involved in the passing game. Caught 4 receptions on 6 targets for 17 yards, but he did rush for 66 yards and a touchdown on only 13 carries in a tougher matchup. So he's looking like he's a matchup-proof running back 2 at worst.
Yeah, I'm not sure what was going on. The Browns just basically, according to the box score, just didn't run plays in this game, and I don't know what the hell happened with them winning.
There's some. It's like Miami Dolphins-esque to begin the season.
Yeah, it was. They had a couple really big plays. It was very strange.
Yeah, they did. And two of those really big plays belonged to Jarvis Landry at a rushing and a receiving touchdown as the Panthers continue to struggle in slot receivers. Total 111 yards. Those were both mostly a big reception and a big run. So just big plays for the Browns, really.
Mm-hmm.
And David Njoku had another tight end Florida. He's been not great over the stretch here. 3 receptions on just 4 targets, 35 yards. A lot of tight end Florida days this week, at least in my games.
Yeah, most of the games I looked at were not a bunch of tight end blow-ups.
I don't think
a
tight
one.
ends did much besides Kittle.
No, they didn't.
All right, Dan, you're up next. You got Colts versus the Texans. The Colts snapped the 8-game winning streak for the Texans, win this one 24-21.
It did. One quick note: it was 5 straight losses for the Panthers.
5, okay.
5. But either way, they're tanking, and it's okay to see, I guess. Well, move on here to Colts. Well, Luck didn't throw 3+ touchdowns. He still had a great day. 399 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick on 41 attempts. Also got you 16 rushing yards. Cowboys and Giants up next, both at home. So good matchups for them for your fantasy playoff stretch. Hopefully you're still in it. As for the running game, didn't do much as a whole. Just total 34 yards between Mack and Hines. Mack got the touchdown to save his day, but only saw 1 target, so thankfully he got that touchdown. Hines was just a Petra 3 for 16 on 5 targets in the passing game. I think he had 3 carries for a yard in the running. So that was pretty crap. Terrible matchup for them next week against the Cowboys, but the Giants should be a good one at least for Mack. Hines is really game script dependent more so, and Mack can at least give you the insulated value with the amount of touches he gets compared to. As for the receivers here, Hilton again was amazing, 9 for 199 on 12 targets. He continues to be the trusted wide receiver 1 down the stretch. He was a little bit banged up after this game, so keep an eye out on his practice statuses throughout the week.
I mean, he was banged up going into it. So.
Yeah, so
tough matchup for him, though. He's got the Cowboys.
Depends how much he gets shadowed by Brian Jones. But I'm assuming more on that later. Zach Pascal showed back up on the box score, 5 for 68 and touchdown on 6 targets. Still not going to chase that, though, as the only other pass catcher to be targeted here is Eric Ebron. Scored again, went 4 for 65 on 8 targets with that touchdown. It gives him 12 on the season, most amongst tight ends, and tied with Devontae Adams and Antonio Brown for most on the season amongst all pass catchers. Defense was okay, no turnovers, but had 5 sacks, 21 points allowed. Boom bust game against the Cowboys at home because they're not as good on the road, and then the Giants is a decent game for them in Week 16. Especially if they decide to move on from Eli Manning and start maybe Kyle Luletta, because there's been murmurs about that over the last couple weeks. As for the Texans here, Watson continues to be his game manager self. Onward to a 267 passing yards, 1 touchdown on 38 attempts. Added 35 rushing yards, so it wasn't a horrible day. Jets and Eagles on the road for the next final 2 games. Just a high QB2 though. That his massive upside hasn't been there for a few weeks, especially if the rushing game doesn't get going for him.
Yeah, outside of the one Dolphins game, he's not been giving you the 4+ touchdown games he was giving you last year.
He had a 3 touchdown game against the Titans, 2 passing, 1 rushing. That really helped propelled it, but they haven't needed him to do a lot as the defense has been suffocating in the running game with Lamar Miller has been of highest service for them. And then speaking of Lamar Miller, his production fell back down to earth. 14 for 33 on the ground, but added 5 for 19 through the air on 6 targets. Also added a rushing touchdown to help save his day. Alfred Blue stole the first one from him. A little bit annoying here. 6 for 21 though on his touches. Miller should be in mid to high RB2 with RB1 upside as he's been better as of late. As for the receivers, Hopkins is starting to lose his high ceiling here with Watkins going into more manager mode and less passing attempts. He was 4 for 36, 1 touchdown on 10 targets. His touchdown came pretty late into the game, so his owners like myself were sweating it pretty badly as I kept checking my game at work here. Those 36 yards he got, though, was the lowest on the season and was the lowest since Week 6 in 2017. So wasn't the great fantasy start day for Hopkins as we all hoped and expected. But he gets 2 really good matchups against the Jets and the Eagles coming up, so hopefully that could change his fortunes here.
Yep, we did just see what Cooper did to the Eagles, so that should be fun.
Yeah. As for the only other pass catcher worth note, Demaryius Thomas, 4 for 48, 6 targets. Again, 2 good matchups, so maybe a low-end flex option if Kuti can't can go in those two matchups. The tight ends were heavily involved in this game. Griffin was the best, 5 for 80 on 5 targets. Akins went 2 for 40 on 2, and Jordan Thomas went 4 for 31 on 4. As you can tell, it's really hard to know who's the own here, so I'm not really buying into this.
No, we need somebody to separate over the offseason, so there's actually a startable asset here.
Yeah, and I forgot to put my note on their defense, but Jets and Eagles up next. Jets are a very good matchup for them, I believe, in week 6, or I believe next week.
Yep. All right, Hopper. This one should be pretty quick. Giants spanked the Redskins 40-16. It was 40-0 before Sanchez got benched and Josh Johnson took over the starting job. Any major takeaways from this one, Hopper?
Yep. Starting with the Giants, Manning threw just 22 times, 197 yards, with 3 touchdowns before giving way to Kyle Letta in a blowout win. It's his third multi-touchdown, 0 interception performance in the last 5 games, but he's got the Titans and the Colts to finish out. So not horrible, but not great matchups, but he's been pretty decent, at least over the stretch run here for a quarterback, too. Saquon Barkley continues to be a monster. He's pretty much locked into a top 4 pick next season. He went 170 yards on just 14 carries and a touchdown on the ground. There 27 in the air before giving way to Wayne Gallman and the rest of the reserves because this was a blowout. Not a whole lot to talk about with the wide receivers. 3 of them caught touchdowns, both Shepherds and Benny Fowler, but not a lot of volume. Corey Coleman had the most yardage at 47. Nothing to take away there other than Odell's the only wide receiver to own. Sterling Shepard, another prime matchup, another dud.
Yeah, the touchdown was the only thing that bailed him out. And Corey Coleman, I think it was all in one play, too.
It was. Evan Ingram, just 5 targets for him, but he catch 3 for 77 yards, so solid tight end one day, back in tight end one day there. And the defense was good in this one against, well, a team they should have been good against since they have no line and no real quarterback. 3 interceptions, 5 sacks, just 16 points allowed.
Mm-hmm.
Dan?
So, yeah, I picked him up, and I forgot to start him because I was at work.
Well done.
Yeah.
As for the Washington NFL team, Sanchez was god-awful, just 38 yards, 2 picks before Josh Johnson took over in garbage time. Completed 11 of 16 for 195 yards, a touchdown, and a pick to guys whose names he learned off of Madden the weekend before. He had another 45 rush yards and 1 touchdown on the ground. Finishes the season against Jacksonville and Tennessee. So don't really go rushing out to get him up, even though he's a dual threat guy.
And that was not a joke Hopper just said. That was literally what Josh Johnson said.
Yeah, he had to play Madden to learn his teammates' names.
There's some slightly breaking news. Pierre Garçon got placed on IR.
Okay.
So
That was a long time coming.
Yeah.
So, yay, Dante Pettis.
Yeah.
Yay. Adrian Peterson, just 19 total yards. Big miss on my part there. Only 11 touches. Thompson was not much better, gaining his 38 yards on 8 touches, so nothing going in the running game. Jamison Crowder was the best receiver, targeted 7 times, snagging just 2 for 87 and a touchdown. Doxson had the more efficient day, 4 receptions on 5 targets for 85 total yards. So outside of Crowder's big play, Doxson was actually the best. And then Jordan Reed hurt himself after just 1 target.
Yep.
Maybe done for the year.
And Doxson also apparently hurt himself with a concussion.
Jesus.
Yep, he's in protocol.
All right, moving on. Jets versus Bills up next. I'm assuming you're not going to comment on the terrible Washington defense.
I don't have anything to say about the Washington defense. Don't own them. Don't start them. Just go drop them.
Yep. Jets versus Bills up next. Jets win this one on a late touchdown, 27-23. On to the Jets first, where Darnold was okay from an NFL standpoint. He got the win, but it was 170 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. So I'm hoping we see more out of him in year 2 because it's been a pretty quiet year 1 between injury and just meh type performances.
I mean to cut you off. I guess there's other breaking news that decided not to go on Sleeper Bot. Austin Eckler is likely not to play Thursday night.
Yep, we'll talk that more about when we get to the both the injury segment.
It just popped up on Roto World as he's extremely doubtful.
And then obviously Wednesday's episode when we preview Thursday's game.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought I saw that yesterday.
There's been people kind of buzzing that it's going to be tough for him to be back on such a short week. Elijah McGuire took over after Crowell left with another foot-related injury, managed enough volume to give himself a solid day, 20 touches, 83 yards, and a touchdown, and 3.5 yards per carry. So not real efficient, but got the job done for you. If Crowell misses any time, he is very startable, just because there's enough volume here, and the team isn't throwing the ball deep enough and pushing the ball downfield to limit their running backs. Only receiver who did anything was Robbie Anderson. Led the team in targets, receptions, and yards, finishing with a 4.76 and 1 stat line on 7 targets. No other pass catcher had 25 yards. It was pretty bad. Chris Herndon has reverted back hard the last couple weeks.
Well, tough matchups hasn't helped them either.
Tough matchups has definitely not helped too. Defense played well, 3 sacks, 2 interceptions, a fumble recovery, but they get the Texans and the Packers the next 2 weeks, so no bueno.
Nope.
On to the Bills, where Josh Allen was pretty god-awful as a passer, 18 of 36 for 206 yards, 2 interceptions, and a fumble lost. But he's still going to finish as a high running quarterback 2, low quarterback 1, because he had 101 yards rushing and a touchdown.
Blake Bortles?
Better than Blake Bortles on the rushing part. I heard some people talking today about that they're speculating he may be preventing his passing game from developing because he's running so much. But yeah, if he's going to get you 100 rushing yards a game, he's a borderline must-start quarterback.
Yeah, he's basically Tim Tebow.
Tim Tebow with a stronger arm.
For now, you hope that the passing game comes along, but at the same time, it's not like he, has a lot of who's who names of wide receivers to throw to.
Exactly.
All right, McCoy got hurt early. Wolverine was unable to regenerate a hamstring in time for the game to end. He is listed as day-to-day now. So if you desperation started Ivory, you were probably really excited, and then he managed 12 carries for 42 yards. So nothing really worked out here. If McCoy does miss time, Ivory is a low priority flex play. Zay Jones got 9 targets, which was kind of what we're looking for when I think Dan had him as the start of the week.
Hopper.
I
liked him a lot though too.
Unfortunately, he reverted to his rookie form, caught 3 for 22 yards.
Wow.
Hopefully it's just a blip for him. Robert Foster was actually the best receiver. He caught 7 of 8 for 104. Actually, I think Hopper and I both noticed him doing some nice stuff in some of his routes and jump ball type plays. Rest of the season schedule, they get the Lions and at the Patriots the next 2 weeks. Oof. All right, Dan, back to you, where the Patriots lose to the Dolphins on the first ever multilateral touchdown ever.
Well, game winner.
I think it was the first ever touchdown where more than one lateral happened.
I think Jacksonville did it, then they missed the extra point against the Saints like a long time ago. That was on a kickoff. There was like 8 laterals in that play.
Okay.
I don't know. Either way, it was a fun finish to watch on Twitter.
Kenyon Drake scores the game-winning touchdown. I noticed when he was at like the 15, I just glanced at that TV and saw like, what the hell happened? So that was a lot of fun. Dan, any major takeaways? It was the Dolphins win 34-33.
We'll start with the Patriots here. Brady decided to shut everybody up and put together his best fantasy day since week 7. 358 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, and 43 attempts. He gets Pittsburgh and Buffalo up next. Pittsburgh, it's a decent matchup. It is on the road, so there could be thrown in that game. Buffalo's a terrible matchup. I believe last time out he threw 1 touchdown and some yards. Not a great day. I still view him as a QB2 though, with a chance of always having games like this. So you're hoping for upside. I don't really see it happening over these next couple weeks. As for the running game, it was pretty meh in what was supposed to be a very plus matchup. All 3 running backs dudded in terms of what we expected. Michelle finished with 20 carries, but only 57 passing yards. Nothing in the receiving game. Burkhead was massively worse. 4 carries, 2 yards on the ground and just 1 catch. And then James White, who had the best game script at least throughout, just managed 2 catches for 15 yards and 4 carries for 13 yards. So massively disappointing day for this running game.
The Patriots were pushing the ball downfield all game. They didn't seem to really care about the run game much.
You would think against one of the league's worst run defenses, you'd try more. I know that without Xavier Howard, it'd expose the secondary more, but you still need to develop a running game.
Agreed.
I still trust Michelle here, though, in terms of all 3 of them. The 20 touches is a plus takeaway. Tough matchup against Pittsburgh on the road, but a lot better matchup at home against Buffalo in your championship week if you make it there. As for these receivers, Gordon and Edelman did as we expected. Gordon didn't get the touchdown, but he finished 5 for 96 on 8 targets. Edelman did get the touchdown, finished 9 for 86, and that touchdown on 12 targets. Both reviewed as wide receiver 2 upside against the Steelers both reviewed as wide receiver 2s with upside against the Steelers next week. And then I guess Patterson got a touchdown, but don't chase those points. He just had 3 targets. Gronk finally had his best game of the season, catching all 8 of his targets for 107 yards and a touchdown, and missed a diving tackle that would have won them the game. And then the defense was shitty, considering this was a this was a decent matchup. No turnovers with 4 sacks, 34 points allowed. Not playing them next week, but I do like them at home against the Bills in Week 16. Moving on to the Dolphins here. I said Tannehill was a sneaky play this week, and I wasn't wrong. 265 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Did it on just 19 attempts.
And one ankle.
And one ankle. But you can safely drop him after this game against the Vikings next week and then the Jacksonville Jaguars in Week 16. Old man Frank Gore had himself a day, though. 13 touches, 116 yards on those. I didn't get a touchdown, but it was good to see him still produce. Drake had the game-winning touchdown to help save his day, but just saw 7 touches on the day. Those went for 79 yards. Both have terrible matchups, again, against the Vikings and Jaguars, so I'm not rushing to play them. And then I guess we can talk about Brandon Bolden and his revenge game. 2 touchdowns on 3 touches. As for the receivers here, Stills gave you another decent day, 8 for 135 and a touchdown on 9 targets. But just like everybody else, with the Vikings and Jaguars up next, I'm not rushing out there to pick them up and play them. You can probably still leave them in your free agency pool or on your bench. Tight ends and everybody else sucked for the receivers, and then the defense is a no-go next week. Maybe Streamworthy in Week 16 against Jacksonville.
All right. Up next, Falcons, Packers. Packers won this one 34-20. I believe they were up 34-7 at one point before too late. Matt Ryan touchdowns bailed his day out. Any other major takeaways from this one, Hopper?
I mean, other than what you said about Matt Ryan, 262 yards, 3 touchdowns, interception, against a pretty mad pass defense. So he did all right late to save his day. Udo Smith actually out-touched and outgained Tevin Coleman in this one, 14-11. Smith had 74 total yards. Coleman's 46. Neither managed a touchdown. Coleman is still costing himself a lot of money, and Udo Smith looks like he's just going to hold the Tevin Coleman role for the next few years.
Yep, I think we see what Smith is going to be, and Coleman has been massively disappointing down the stretch here.
Yeah,
yes. Julio Jones scored twice. Other than that, it was his normal 11 target, 8 reception, and over 100-yard day. Monmouth Sanu outperformed Ridley again, going for 54 on 6 receptions. Ridley caught just one of his 4 targets for 10 yards. He's had just one startable performance over his last 5 games.
Droppable.
Yeah, I was really disappointed in him in this one.
Very droppable after a very good start. Then Osterd and Hooper gave you a tight end floor, 4 receptions, 35 yards.
Yep, I was hoping for a little more out of Hooper, but still a solid game from him.
Yeah, not much to say about the defense there. On to the Packers. Rodgers was better-ish in this one. Very efficient, 21-32, 196 yards. Did score 2 touchdowns in the game, which Green Bay led a lot of it. Aaron Jones saw his touches uptick to 20. He's turned that into 106 total yards and 1 rush touchdown, 3 receptions. Jamal Williams saw just 4 touches in a normal change of pace role. People still getting mad every time Jamal Williams touches the ball. Is hilarious.
Yep. Are you referring to me specifically?
No, it's Twitter that does it too. I'm like, dude, it was 4 touches. I mean, there's a lot of that.
There's 3 too many.
Yeah. Devontae Adams and Randall Cobb were the top 2 wide receivers in this one. Adams got 7-11 for 81 yards and a touchdown. His normal, very startable wide receiver one day. Cobb was 5-6 for 43 and a touchdown. Nothing out of ESP or MVS. Cobb probably the 2 here rest of the season as long as he's healthy.
Yeah, I'd be real nervous starting him, but he's the 2.
I mean,
I emergency started him.
I told somebody that came into work to start Cobb. That was because his receivers were just as equally bad, but
worked out for him.
We've seen it different too almost every week. I feel like for the last 4 or 5 weeks.
Cobb hasn't been healthy either.
That's true.
Second straight week. This is the second target getter for wide receiver.
Yeah.
Jimmy Graham was gross, just 13 total yards.
I saw him get targeted a bunch, but apparently it just never worked.
Nope. Well, that's exactly what it was. His target volume was fine, but he never caught anything. The defense managed a pick 6. So, sure.
Yeah. You feel real confident going and starting those Packers.
Yeah. Don't expect that every week.
And they get the Bears next week, right?
Yes.
All right. Last game we got before the beer review is Saints versus the Buccaneers. Saints overcome a 14-3 halftime deficit. They win this game 28-14. But with some disappointing stats on the Saints side of the ball for a second straight week.
But before we get to that, we have a listener question.
Oh, do
Austin Murray wants to know, Jerron Brown or David Moore in PPR tonight?
David Moore.
David Moore.
I like Moore.
All the David Moore.
Yes. Big plays.
I had a league that doesn't really matter that I had to bench Baldwin and put somebody in. I'm out of the playoffs, but I just threw somebody in there. I had to grab Brown because Moore was already gone, but I would still prefer Moore.
There's no Trey Waynes tonight, so big plays galore potentially.
Well, that'll most likely that'll help Lockett more, I think.
Well, all three of them, especially Moore and Lockett, see big plays with no Baldwin. It depends who gets thrown in the middle.
Yep.
Either way, though, moving on to the Saints here. Breeze was okay, and it was good to okay for road Breeze. 201 passing yards, 2 total touchdowns. Did have 2 turnovers, though, 31 pass attempts. He gets another great matchup next week on paper, but it is on the road in Carolina, so, temper your expectations for his stat line. Then he gets the Steelers at home in Week 16. I know I got the word right.
I did. You did. Give you a little clap.
Thanks. He gets Pittsburgh in Week 16 at home, so if you can survive next week with he does have a good matchup in the championship week. As for the running backs here, touchdown save Ingram's Day, 14 touches for 53 yards. Kamara somewhat had a disappointing game with what was supposed to be a decent to great matchup here. So that's 17 touches, 5 of which were catches for 87 yards.
And they get the 2-point conversion.
And while you'll never sit Kamara, he's been more of an RB2 than an RB1 these last 3 games since he hasn't scored a touchdown in them. So I guess the split is making him maybe a little more touchdown dependent in terms of what we expected from him.
And just the offense hasn't been as explosive the last couple weeks either.
Well, all 3 straight road games, and a team that's traditionally been better at home as opposed to on the road. So, but that didn't stop Michael Thomas. He kind of got back to his higher than floor day, 11 for 98 on 13 targets. Did just miss a touchdown to give him an even better wide receiver one day. Trey Quinn again was held without a catch. Nobody else did anything of note. So if you're not Breeze, Kamara, Ingram, Thomas, Lutz with a defense, you're not rosterable at this point.
Got really confused for a second. You said Trey Quinn, not Traquan.
Or Traquan, sorry.
I'm like, wait, we're talking about the Redskins?
Yeah, see, they picked him up and played him on
Trey Quinn Smith, super slot receiver.
Trey Quinn Smith, 6'2" super slot receiver. Traquan Smith. So they're all droppable outside of the bigger names here. And then speaking of the defense, they put together another nice day, 1 turnover, 4 sacks, and 14 points allowed. Not the best matchups coming up, though, against the Panthers and Steelers. Maybe next week, depending on which Cam Newton shows up. As for the Bucs here, Winston was pretty meh as expected. 213 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, and 38 attempts with 47 rushing yards. Started out kind of hot, and then it really simmered down.
Almost all the production was in the first half.
As the second half started, it's still a good it still should be a decent QB2 day for him, and what was considered a terrible matchup. But now he gets the Ravens and Cowboys up next, both on the road. In redraft league, you can safely drop him. The Cowboys game could be up in the air as they've been really good against running backs and receivers. I don't think they've been as good against quarterbacks. So. As for this running game, it really slowed down once the Saints took control of it. Barber finished with 15 touches for 44 yards. But like we said last week, you probably should have dropped him or at the very least put him on your bench. Rodgers got 8 touches for 54 yards and most of the receiving work. And I will apologize for Chris Godwin's performance. Well, not apologize for the 10 targets he saw and the 1 catch he got. What we wanted out of him was there in 10 targets. What we didn't get from him was the production.
Him.
It wasn't.
I saw a note on Twitter that only 1 of those 10 targets was actually catchable, and he caught it.
Super disappointing. But as for the other start of the week from this game, in Adam Humphries, who's second on the team in targets with 8, caught 4 for 42 on those. So a little bit disappointing from that there. And then Mike Evans led all receivers in yards, but had just 6 targets. He went 4 for 86 on his. All 3 of these guys have tough matchups again with the Ravens and Cowboys up next, both on the road. I mean, it might be difficult to sit Evans, but he's more of a wide receiver too. Humphries gets the flex value given his safer floor, but I'm putting Godwin on the bench or in the free agency pool, just because his floor isn't quite there as the other 2. And then Brait was 2017 Jimmy Graham, 2 for 12 and 2 touchdowns and 4 targets. In the defense, kind of showed up, but that's it.
All right. That's all we got for the noon games. Let's go ahead and hit a beer review, and we'll run into the 4 o'clock and Sunday night matchups to finish up Week 14.
Beer review.
Hit the round button there, buddy.
It was a misclick. All right. What did you guys think of Abrasive Double IPA by Surly Brewing Company?
I don't know if abrasive is the right word for it. It's pretty not abrasive, actually. It starts out very, very juicy before it fades into just kind of a moderate bitterness on the back end. Lot of just juicy West Coast style notes in this one. It's been a while since we've had a solid West Coast IPA. Typically prefer these when it's not 20 degrees out, but they did a very good job with it.
Yeah, I think this drank more of just of like drinking Furious, but with actual juicy hops to it, than more of just their traditional double IPA. So there's not a lot of bitterness in terms of what would be considered a double IPA in this, but as Hopper said, the citrus up front is really there, and then it ends with the dry bitterness, as that traditional West Coast does very well.
Yep. This is a just generally not significantly less intensive a IPA than I was expecting in terms of how bitter it is.
Especially from
Surly usually
Surly.
is notoriously over hopped and just loves to crank those IBUs through the roof, and this one isn't like that at all. So if you're looking for a solid double with some nice juiciness to it, that's got a moderate amount of hops, but nothing crazy for a double IPA, it's a solid option for you.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I'll be cranking through the rest of it here as we get through the last couple of games. So the Sunday night game should be interesting.
Yeah, I got more beer to drink too.
All right, up next, Eagles versus the Cowboys. Cowboys pull out the win 29-23 in overtime. And if it wasn't for the crazy Derrick Henry performance on Thursday night, Cooper would have the highest point total of the week.
Hey, that's my game.
It is your game.
Sorry, still looking for Doug Baldwin shares. Anyway, starting with the Eagles, Carson Wentz, he picked it up late in this one. 22 of 30 for 228 yards and 3 touchdowns, give you a solid day. But it was not that pretty for, I don't know, about the first 50 minutes. The end of this game just got insane.
Yeah, the Eagles had 44 yards at halftime.
Yeah, no, it was when I got to Edwardsville, which is an hour and a half drive after I left the bars, it was 6 to 9. And then things just started going off the handle. Josh Adams in this one, though, predictably bad, so I hope you listen to me when I said to sit him. All the running backs are pretty bad in this one for the Eagles. Adams totaled just 36 yards on a mere 7 carries. Sproles did catch a touchdown, but only had 4 touches. Smallwood saw the box score, but nothing worth noting.
And Clement destroyed his knee.
And Clement tore up his knee.
Yep.
As for the wide receivers, Golden Tate was nowhere to be found in this one. Alshon Jeffrey had just 50 yards on 9 targets, but he did catch a touchdown. Nelson Aguilar, just 3 targets, about 45 total yards. Nothing to write home about.
I saw Tate had like 20 snaps.
Yeah, not good.
I don't know what they're doing.
Jesus Christ.
This offense doesn't know what it's doing. Except for when it comes to tight ends. Tight ends, once again, good. Goddard outperformed Ertz in this one for the first time this season, though. He snagged 4 balls for 44 yards and a touchdown. Ertz had a tight end floor day, 5 receptions and 38 yards. Goddard, when he gets his chance, is going to be a freaking monster as a dynasty note. He's shown it. He's flashed with it. He's going to be exceptional, but he's going to be stuck behind Ertz for the foreseeable future.
He had a 60-yard touchdown as well that was called back on a pansy offensive pass interference call.
Yeah, that was not OPI.
Yeah, I think looking back on, from what I remember, I think 2020 is when you could see them move on from Ertz.
Yeah, unless
I say could.
unless one of them gets traded before then.
Yeah,
Which could easily happen also. Especially with them pressed up against the cap. They decide to move Ertz.
Yeah. All right, up next to the Dallas Dak Prescotts.
Yeah, Dak Prescott, by the way, he had his best day as a passer, I think, ever against the beat-up Philly secondary. 42 of 54, 455 yards, 3 total touchdowns. Did throw 2 picks. Threw picks. His only real blemish. He's been average to quite good since the Amari Cooper trade. More on Cooper later.
It was the second highest yardage total for a Cowboys quarterback ever. The only one that was more was Romo's duel against the Broncos in 2013.
Ooh.
Zeke Elliott had 113 yards on the ground and 79 through the air. No touchdowns, but a rare Barkley-like receiving day for Zeke, because they weren't lying when they said they were going to turn up his passing work, and he's answered the bell there. He's clearly a dual threat running back.
Yep, especially as we've gotten to the second half of the season here and they've added Cooper. He has been a heavily involved part of the passing game.
And I love seeing it.
It's just been such a different dynamic since Cooper showed up. And in this one, he's the talk of everybody. 10 receptions, 217 yards, 3 touchdowns, and kind of that one Amari Cooper blow-up game that you get every year. Except, he's been consistent relatively, even outside of his blow-up since he came to Dallas. The problem definitely was Oakland and not Amari Cooper. He's an absolute must-start going forward rest of the season. He's improving his draft stock for next year. Michael Gallup was second in targets, caught just 4 at 9. So he may integrate, but Cooper's by far the one and going to be the one there for a bit.
Yeah, Gallup is, on the positive note, he's doing a fantastic job of getting open. There's some chemistry issues between Gallup and Dak, where there's some times where he'll be wide open and they're just off where the ball
we've
is
called
placed.
this too when we were watching him on film. Like, we saw he's going to be a really good wide receiver too. We saw the upside when he got drafted by Dallas, but with Cooper there and him taking up top coverage has helped him.
There needs to be chemistry at the quarterback, and what I worry about is if this is a Golden Tate type of thing where Tate was not great in Seattle because there was just never any chemistry and the offense didn't really fit, and then he went to Detroit and was fantastic.
Yeah, but I'm seeing enough small things where he's wide open so often that it's either going to work here or wherever he ends up in free agency. So you may be waiting a while, but either he'll develop.
He's a rookie. I mean, most receivers don't blow up year one. We're still kind of, tasting the fruits of 2014 too.
I know, but the difference between people that perform like Gallup on tape and most rookies is you only do see them flash a little bit.
Yeah,
even Corey Davis last year. So
I get you. I get you where you guys are coming from.
Blake Jarwin had himself a solid tight end day, by the way. Caught all 7 of his targets for 56 yards. So pretty good day for him and kind of a Jason Witten sort of role.
Yeah.
And that's all I got.
All right. Up next to a game I'm going to try to move through pretty quickly because it was pretty disappointing on one side of the football, and it was Broncos going to San Francisco to play the 49ers. They lose 20-14. I believe it was 20-0 at one point in this one.
I think so.
On the Broncos side, whole team was disappointing, but we'll start with Keenum, who I think was king of the disappointing kill here. 4.4 yards per attempt, with finished with 186 yards and a single touchdown in 42 attempts. So any value Keenum had, losing Sanders ended it.
Yeah. Bad.
Lindsey comes in as the most efficient runner in the league and then was 2.1 yards per attempt with a long run of 5 in this game. 51 total yards on 18 touches. If he hadn't had a touchdown, he probably would have lost every single owner their playoff game. Freeman actually flashed a little bit here, though. He finished with 36 yards on 6 carries, had a couple nice runs here. Hopefully this is a trend in the right direction as we start looking towards 2019. Sutton laid an egg, 2 of 6 targets, 14 yards. There was a couple balls that he just couldn't quite make the play on, so you saw the athleticism, the ability, but it just wasn't enough to make anything happen with it. Hopefully he can bounce back, but you may need to wait till 2019 before he starts seeing his true breakout. The production actually came from somebody named Tim Patrick, who caught 7 of 10 targets for 85 yards, and then rookie Deshaun Hamilton, who caught 7 of 9 for 47 yards and a touchdown.
I kept seeing Tim Patrick and questioning it because he did flash some early in the season with some big plays, and we had to mention his name a few times, and I was almost wondering if he was going to be more of a grab just in case it wasn't Sutton.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what happened. I know Sutton did get banged up in this one, but I'm not sure exactly what happened and why Patrick exploded, but he looked good.
Well, shout out to show friend Miguel, Dynasty Guru. He put him on his PSI rating, and he rated out pretty good at, I think, a mid to high 4.
Out of a max of 6?
It was like 4.42, second highest on the team. So there is some potential dynasty value.
Over Hamilton?
Over Hamilton. It was just, I think, mid 2.
Right. Well, Tim Patrick, a name to know then. Defense underwhelmed. They get 3 sacks and a turnover for an okay floor day, but this was not the blow-up game you were hoping for out of their defense. Finished the season with the Browns at home and at the Raiders, so still a holdable defense for that. On to the 49ers, where Mullins had himself a solid day, making it 3 out of 5 games so far this season. Finished with 332 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Not a top 12 day, I don't think. I think he's just going to miss it, but good enough for streamer status.
I'll take it.
Jeff Wilson saw almost all the running back touches, 24 of 27 total, finished with 96 total yards. If he'd gotten the touchdown, it would have been a running back one day for him. So well done, Jeff Wilson. I wouldn't be shocked if they just shut down Breida and run Wilson through the end of season here.
They should have.
I wouldn't be either. And by the way, Nick, good job on Jeff Wilson. I believe that was you.
Yep, thank you very much.
Nice job, sir.
Also, Cooper and Dak.
Yeah, and I think I had the Nick Mullins call this week.
You did have the Nick Mullins call.
Oh, I got Jared Goff got right, so I'm good there.
Yeah, you did. Oh, jeez.
Oh,
We'll get to the Sunday night game in a minute.
Foreshadowing.
George Kittle went and said, I'm going to win everyone their week before the first half ends. Caught 7 of 9 targets for 210 yards and a touchdown. 8 of those 9 targets were in the first half, and he didn't catch his second half target.
Yeah.
He is a top 3 tight end heading into 2019. I would draft him over Gronk.
Yeah.
Only other bright spot in the receiving game, though, was Dante Pettis. He caught his 4th touchdown in the last 3 games. Finished with 3 receptions for 49 yards and 7 targets. No one else had more than 4 targets, and the only other really name of note was Goodwin, who had 2 for 20 yards in this game.
Oof.
So I think Pettis is going to be the wide receiver 1 heading into next year.
I think Pettis is a good name to know going into next year also. And because unless they do something in free agency or swing a trade or turn one of those draft picks into a franchise guy, he is the one.
I think they will.
Do turn...
And they just spent a second on him, so...
Right. If they do somehow turn into a franchise wide receiver, I still love Pettis as a 2 because he can do so many different things. He can stretch the field, he can run routes, he can run out of the slot.
Yeah, he's been fun to watch these last 3 to 4 games for him as he's kind of gotten... He's kind of taken that one role and ran with it.
His route running is so pretty too.
Yeah, a lot better. Really, I mean, it flashed on tape, but it didn't flash to this extent.
Defense was okay. Held the Broncos to 14 points. Got a couple sacks out of them. Rough end of season schedule though. Seahawks and Bears.
Yeah.
On to Bengals versus the Chargers. Chargers didn't pull away in this one and didn't really exploit the Bengals defense like I thought they would. They pull out the win, but it's 26-21.
Yeah, sorry, the Bengals here. Jeff Driscoll didn't kill you. Should have the game-winning touchdown, I believe, right?
It would have been a touchdown that would have brought it much closer. It was in the second half that it happened, but it wasn't a game winner.
All right, so he had 170 passing yards, 1 touchdown, no picks, and 27 attempts, added 12 rushing yards. Oakland and Cleveland up next. Oakland's actually pretty good against quarterbacks this season, so I'm not playing him there, and he's got some super flex value against Cleveland in Week 16. Joe Mixon had himself a nice game. 31 touches, which I believe was season high and potentially career high. For 138 yards and a touchdown. The touch amount will always keep him as a high RB2. He gets a good matchup next week against Oakland. He's just going to be a safe high RB2 with RB1 upside moving forward. And then Gio, in terms of what should have been a plus matchup of game script, he turned that into a dud performance. 2 catches for 13 yards and 3 carries for 7 yards. So you can move on from him.
Unless you're the Mixon owner.
And yeah. And what was supposed to be a tough matchup for receivers really kind of lived up to that.
Oh, speaking of that thought, something I just remembered. As a just general strategy thing, if you're holding any handcuffs and you get through week 15, once you get to like Saturday and you're through all the practices and you know somebody's healthy and good to go, you can cut handcuffs at that point and start stashing things to block your opponents.
Yep, that's a very, very, very good strategy. Moving on again to receivers. This is a tough matchup, so not surprising to see the low numbers here. Boyd led the team in targets and yards, finished 3 for 52 on 6 targets. John Ross continues to annoy fantasy owners. 2 for 11 and a touchdown on 4 targets. This makes 4 touchdowns over his past 5 games, but hasn't had over 50 yards since week 4, and it hasn't had a game with more than 3 receptions in it. Huzama was pretty meh again, 3 for 37 on 3 targets. Decent matchup still coming up. Makes him a decent streaming value for tight ends if you need one in deeper leagues. And then speaking of the Chargers here, the multi-touchdown streak ends for Rivers. He goes 2 for 20, 1 touchdown, no picks on 29 attempts, added 7 rushing yards. Gets a great he gets a great matchup next week or on Thursday night against the Chiefs, and a not so good matchup against the Ravens in 16. So you should likely get one good week out of him before you can safely drop him. As for the running backs here, Austin Eckler was the better back to own in this game. Finished with 17 touches for 96 yards and a touchdown. With Gordon likely back on Thursday night against the Chiefs, and with Eckler likely missing the game, I think you can drop him unless we hear more on Melvin Gordon if he's not going to play Thursday night.
You're waiting for more news, I think.
Yeah. I mean, don't drop him now, but hold him until you hear more news. And then as for Justin Jackson, his encore was not much of an encore. 9 touches for 35 yards. I say you can safely drop him with Gordon's availability on Thursday once you find out more, but with Austin Eckler likely to miss the game, you can hold on to Jackson just in case.
I'm holding Jackson through week 15 just based on...
Yeah, just in case. As for the receivers here, Keenan Allen keeps his second half hot streak going. 5 for 78 and a touchdown on 9 targets. He's an auto start regardless of matchup. Mike Williams actually saw some targets in this, though he was 3 for 45 on 6 of those. Tyrell sucked again, and Gates couldn't take advantage of a great matchup. 2 for 19 on 2 targets. KC and Baltimore are good matchups for Gates, but he doesn't do anything with the volume, and it seems to be just the receivers in terms of the passing game.
Agreed.
And the defense was a disappointment in this one. No turnovers, 3 sacks allowed with 21 points. Not playing them Thursday night against the Chiefs, obviously, and they're a mere boom bust against the Ravens in Week 16.
All right. Dylan wants to know, guys, Herndon is killing me. Should I be looking at Swaim or Ferkser? 1.35 points per tight end receptions. He needs a floor guy. So
Ferkser is probably your best option.
So I would probably
Where's
hold
Ferkser from?
Tennessee.
Okay,
Now that
they're
Smith's
back
out.
Okay.
Now I kind of like holding Herndon one more week because he gets the Texans next week, who are a bottom 6 defense against tight ends.
Yeah, Herndon's still got more upside out of that. If you need floor Ferkser is the way I would go. Swaim, it was just Jarwin. Swaim's hurt, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he was trying to say Jarwin.
Yeah, Jarwin, on the other hand, maybe a little bit more, but Dallas's offense, even though they had a good week, so probably leaning Ferkser just because we know that Tennessee uses a tight end.
And Titans see the Giants and the Redskins.
Both good passing matchups.
Yeah, but I'm not sure.
I'm
not sure it's good tight end matchups.
Evan Ingram just went for 77 on
he
5
said
targets against the Redskins.
He said Jarwin. Still got to lean Herndon. He's been able to put it together all season, and you kind of know what you're going to get from him. I agree with Hopper. He does have the most upside. We don't really know what the floor is for these other two quite at this point. Jarwin showed a little bit of upside in first grade one game.
I mean, good tight ends have done fine against the Redskins.
These aren't good tight ends.
But yeah, the Giant. Yeah, I think against the Texans, just because they're pretty bad against tight ends, I'm still starting Herndon in 15, then I'm reevaluating.
Yeah, I would also. I mean, Jarwin's had one game over 25 total yards.
And that was this one.
Going back and looking at it, and it was this one.
You can ask this again after week 15. Hopefully, Herndon shows up for you.
But yeah, he's had 2 bad Titans and Bills are 2 of the are both top 5 against tight ends, and the Texans are on the opposite end of that spectrum.
Yeah, they give up.
Yeah, Ferkser on the other hand, 44, 52, 42, and a touchdown, and then 27.
Yeah, I like Ferkser. In that type of league, I'd probably be trying to grab him.
Maybe both if you feel like you can do
Herndon.
you can stash them both and move on from there.
All right. Up next, Lions versus the Cardinals. Lions win 17-3. Only 13 of those points were offensive, though, so I'm going to make this fast. On the Lions, Stafford just sucks at this point. 101 yards on 23 attempts. No Golden Tate has killed Stafford completely. It's awful.
Well, Cardinals are good, too. So
they've got to get him receiving help, or at least carry on Johnson back.
Yep. Speaking of the running game, hopefully started Zach Zenner, not LeGarrette Blount. Zach Zenner had 54 yards and a touchdown on 12 carries.
Ooh, Egan.
Blount had 14 touches, 51 yards, and a lost fumble, and then Riddick was 10 touches for 58 yards. So this is a mess. and hopefully we can get Kerryon back next week and get some clarity in this
I
backfield.
mean, other than the touchdown, they're all about the same.
Yeah.
right.
Somewhere between 50 and 60 yards on somewhere between 10 and 14 touches,
and one got a touchdown.
and one fumbled.
And one
Cardinals bad at run defense.
Yep, 50 yards for everyone.
you get 50. You get 50.
Apologies for Galladay. We pushed him pretty hard during the start-sit questions.
Apparently, saw Patrick Peterson 60% of his snaps, though.
Okay, but why weren't they throwing him to the other 40%? 2 catches for 5 yards on 4 targets.
That's why.
I'm not even sure how that happened.
I don't.
My next note is I'm not sure how that's possible. Even if they were scheming to take him away, she should have had more than 4
Or
targets.
somebody else should have done something.
Yeah. No wide receiver or tight end had more than 26 yards. And at this point, I'm not sure there's a Lion outside of Kerryon Johnson who's worth owning.
Depends who they get next week.
They have the Bills and the
right?
Vikings.
The Bills, if Kerryon plays against the Bills, yes. 16 against the Vikings, no uncertable.
Yeah, they have a terrible schedule. You can't start Stafford anymore. You can't start the receiving game anymore. I don't think there's a line that's worth owning outside of Kerryon.
You can't start their defense anymore.
Ever.
Well, defense is a little bright spot. 3 sacks, a pick, and a defensive touchdown.
I mean, that is the Cardinals.
It is the Cardinals. Maybe against the Bills, but definitely drop them before the Vikings game. On to the Cardinals, where Rosen just is not productive enough to be fantasy relevant. 240 yards, so hey, he broke 200 yards in this game, but no touchdowns, threw an interception. I don't see this getting better for him until at least next season.
They need another weapon or 2.
And probably a new offensive scheme and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Yep.
David Johnson got you 23 touches, but for just 61 total yards. At this point, we're kicking him to 2019 and hoping they can get an offense installed that works.
He's going to be a fun third-round pick next year with upside. Actually, it'll probably be a second round.
He'll be a second rounder by the time August comes and everyone's back on the hype train.
Yeah, he'll be falling to that late second round, and people will be like 20 touches a game. I have to take him.
Yeah.
Kirk on IR. There's something named Trent Sherfield stepped up and took the role for him. He caught 5 of 7 targets for 77 yards. He led the team in production. If you're in a super deep league, I guess he's an interesting waiver wire ad because no one knows who the hell he is.
What the hell is that?
Trent Sherfield?
Yeah.
It sounds like a bad sex move.
A Trent
You're
Sherfield?
doing the Trent Sherfield.
Slide it over here. I'm going to use Trent Sherfield.
I was going to say it's going to be Trent Reznor's folk band.
Oh, his third band, right next to Blur 2.
He sounds like a minor league baseball player.
Oh my God, he sounds like the coach of a minor league baseball team.
Yeah, the show would generate as a player name.
Yeah,
Right.
Only other player who did much was Fitzgerald. He got 5 and 9 for 55 yards, so okay in PPR leagues. Defense was completely left out to dry. They held the Lions to 223 total yards, but because of game script, they were just basically playing it safe all game. 1 sack and just 1 turnover overall.
Ooh, that rest of the season schedule.
They get the Falcons and the Rams the next 2 weeks.
Give me Trent Sherfield. Let's go.
Let's go.
maybe David Johnson will do more than 61 yards.
All right. Up next, we got our last afternoon game before we hit the Sunday night game. It is Raiders versus the Steelers. Raiders win 24-21. The Steelers had lined up to kick a game-tying field goal, and the kicker slipped on their shitty fucking field.
Love it.
Reasons they shouldn't move to Vegas. Don't get that type of home field advantage.
Well, and there was also the whole Ben Roethlisberger fiasco.
Yes.
Where apparently he was good enough to play because it was the Raiders. They didn't let him play, and they ended up losing. Speaking of Ben, he had no kid. It could have been better if they not screwed around at that. 25 of 28, super efficient. 282 yards, 2 touchdowns. If he had played the whole game, he would have been absolutely what we expected him to be, I would think.
Yeah, it probably would have been close to 403.
Yeah, but they experimented with Josh Dobbs. That didn't happen.
Never experiment with Josh Dobbs unless you're doing rocket science.
Or he's kicking a football.
Yeah, right in the chest. He should have been kicking passes to his wide receivers. Jalen Samuels and Stephen Ridley are not James Conner. Jalen Samuels was terrible as a runner. Yeah, just 28 yards and 11 carries. That's kind of expected, though, at least based on what we saw in his college tape. So sorry, truthers. The good news is also like we saw in his college tape, pretty good receiver. Caught all 7 for 64 yards. He was a good receiver out of the backfield, just out there as a runner. And speaking of runners that aren't there, Ridley managed just 4 yards on 5 carries. He did have a touchdown, though, for some reason.
Sorry, Samuel's owners.
Yep. Juju Smith-Schuster was the guy on this day. Caught 8 of 12 for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns to give you a monster day. Brown just 35 yards in this one. And the tight ends both gave you floor days, 35 and 28 yards for McDonald and James, respectively.
Yeah.
So Juju.
Some serious hungry eyes for Juju in this one. I thankfully probably survived a Juju firestorm thanks to having Cooper.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
As for the Raiders, Derek Carr, 322 yards, 2 touchdowns for his second straight good performance. Multi-touchdown games in 3 of his last 4. Hasn't thrown a pick since week 5, and he's got the Bengals and Broncos team this season.
How you doing, Derek Carr?
Yeah, not saying Derek Carr's a good streamer to win your championship, but it's kind of looking that way.
If you're desperate.
I mean, Nick Mullins, was fine.
Yep. Doug Martin had just 32 yards on 16 carries, but he did score again. That's 3 straight weeks with a touchdown for him. Jalen Richard's game script did not go as planned, however, 1 target on 1 reception because they weren't playing from behind in this one like they should have been. Seth Roberts and Jordan Nelson each thought it was 1 target. It was actually 7. Roberts turned his into 76 yards, while Jordy had just 48.
I was going to be really impressed that they both turned 1 target into 40-plus yards, and I'm a little disappointed.
Especially Derek Carr throwing the football, averages like negative 2 yards a pass. And then Jared Cook had another monster game as the team's top target. Caught 10 on this one. 10 targets on this one. Caught 7 for 116 yards. But Derek Carrier and Lee Smith, however, took the touchdowns from him.
All right. Any other takeaways from this game?
Nope. Jared Cook, Doug Martin, Derek Carr. Just names to know rest of the season.
All right. On to Rams versus the Bears. Bears win 15-6 at home in the most disappointing Sunday night fantasy playoff performance ever.
I'm not shocked.
I'm not shocked.
You started the Bears defense against all reasonable logic.
I considered it in a spot. I ended up starting the Titans, so it didn't kill me. But
No, you're fine.
Well, I started the Patriots over the Bears, but I had Amari Cooper in that league.
So you're fine.
So the league I started the Titans, I also had Amari Cooper on my bench, but I'm still going to win anyway.
Right.
So I left like 50-something
start
points.
ahead of Amari Cooper.
Diggs and Michael Thomas.
Okay.
Bears matchup proof.
Yeah, apparently. After they give you 5 against the Giants last week, and then give you 20 against the fucking Rams.
Daniel, and they were at home in the cold.
Yep.
In this one.
In most scoring formats, Goff finished negative for you. Basically, if you started Goff, you're probably heading home. 180 total yards, 4 interceptions, no touchdowns on 44 attempts, and he looked awful. It was not
Him and the offensive line were just fucking putrid, man. It was gross.
One day I'm going to tell you that's actually putrid. But anyway,
That one day is today.
Welcome to Bearfield Fantasy Football, a long con to teach Dan English.
And Dan will never learn English.
Anyway,
He doesn't need to.
Goff's interceptions, other than the Fuller one where he just made a really good play on that route, he was off. I mean, he threw well, and the offensive lineman stepped on his foot for one of them. That didn't help.
He didn't. I don't think he stepped on his foot. He was pushed back into where he was stepping to. I think
either
it was,
way,
but
it
yeah.
affected his
They
throw.
showed a close up later on in the game. He did catch his toe on that one. One of those picks was also a Hail Mary at the end of the half.
But yeah, for fantasy purposes, it sucked.
It did.
Goff owners are probably not making the semifinals.
I will say that Trubisky's interceptions were more on the quarterback than Goff's were.
Yeah, seven total interceptions in this game, just to give you a preview.
A true defensive struggle.
Gurley also screwed his owners and sent a lot of people home. 58 total yards on 14 touches. That's 2 of his last 3. He's been pretty underwhelming, and he's struggling when it matters most for teams.
He won you a championship last year.
Okay, that's only helpful for dynasty owners. The redraft owners don't get that benefit.
Doesn't matter. What he did last year helps to carry over to this year.
I think he'll be fine. We know this is a very, very solid run defense, and they were definitely keen on Gurley and letting the cornerbacks play the receivers, and they did well.
Well, for the rest of their season schedule, they get the Eagles, which is okay, but they're easier to pass on than run on, so Goff probably goes off, not necessarily Gurley.
And the Cardinals.
And then they get the Cardinals, so he's fine. And if you can get to week 16 with Gurley, you're good.
If you survive Gurley this week.
Yep, if you manage to get through this week. If you started a Rams receiver, I hope it was Woods. He got 13 targets, 61 yards, and 7 receptions, so pretty solid day. Reynolds, Everett, and Cooks all had 7 targets and all had 36 yards or less.
Now, this is where Goff being off hurts because he was just missing these guys. It didn't lead to the turnovers, but it led to a lot of misses for his pass catchers.
Yeah,
They had in drops, too.
There was a few drops. There was misses. There was plays that people, they caught the ball and could have made significantly larger plays and didn't. I'm
Josh
looking at
Reynolds.
you, Josh Reynolds.
What the fuck, man?
Turn up field, asshole.
Turn up field.
Receivers are dancing way too much this year.
Defense did its job, though. Sack, 3 interceptions, 13 points allowed. For a road game where they've been a pretty meh defense most of the year, they did a good job here.
They're all finally somewhat healthy.
Yep.
This could be a very good defense zone for the playoffs.
If you get the Rams defense into the championship game, congratulations, because you get the Cardinals.
That's right.
Eagles next week also isn't a terrible start. For the Bears, Trubisky was god-awful. The defense bailed him out constantly. 110 yards on 30 attempts, 1 touchdown, 3 picks. The touchdown was to an offensive lineman for some reason. Only 23 rushing yards, so there was just nothing here.
It was a cool play, but he looked rusty. The 3 picks were all 3 on balls that were just thrown high.
He could not throw accurately in the middle of the field. They were all high.
Yeah, everything was sailing on him.
So the majority of the offense was Howard and Cohen. Howard would finish with 103 yards and 20 touches. 19 of those were runs, and he finished with 101 rushing yards. That was finally a solid performance from him. Unfortunately, I don't think there's a ton of Howard orders in the playoffs, but if you have him, you might be able to start him against the Packers and 49ers the next 2 weeks.
Yep.
Cohen, 13 touches for 89 total yards. He has been awesome down the stretch. This was one of his worst performances in the last couple of games, and it was still for 89 yards, and I think he had 4 catches. So you'll take it.
You will definitely take it.
Receivers were quiet. Robinson was the only one who did much, 5 of 8 for 42 total yards. Gabriel and Burton both had 22. Miller with the goose egg. Miller's very droppable.
Yes, he is.
Defense, I have no other way to say it. They stepped the fuck up in this game. 3 sacks, 4 interceptions, and a safety with only 6 points allowed. They have the Packers at home and the 49ers at the road. You're just going to plug and play the rest of the way.
And I didn't see what the injury was, but they lost Bryce Callahan in this one, too, and it didn't matter.
Yep. I thought Robert Woods was just going to start going off when that happened, and nothing changed.
Nope.
Hopefully that's not serious for them, especially for those of us who own the Bears defense in places.
Or, just like the Bears.
Or just Bears fans. All right, that's all we got on the games. Let's head over and talk about a few injuries for you guys before we wrap up this episode. Brian Tannehill with his ankle is day-to-day. Like we saw on tape, it had just swelled up on him. His legs didn't look like they belonged to the same person by the end of the game.
He could barely stand. He was hobbling on one leg. He could barely walk. It was a gutsy performance by Tannehill.
Yeah. Well done, Ryan Tannehill. I was impressed with him on that.
Now we get Brock Osweiler.
If he is out.
If Ryan Tannehill can stand up straight, they're going to put him behind that offensive line over Brock Osweiler.
They have a shot at making the playoffs somehow when they started Brock Osweiler for 4 games.
He won them some games.
He won them 1
against Chicago.
Against the Bears.
Who he's really good against, apparently.
For running backs, you got LaShawn McCoy. Wolverine could not regenerate his hamstring in time to finish the game, but he's day-to-day because it's LaShawn McCoy.
Yep.
Corey Clement sprained his MCL. He's likely done for the year.
Yeah, he's done.
Did not step up this year, especially with opportunity like many people thought he would. More on him when we do our recaps.
Yep. Isaiah Crowell with the foot injury. He re-aggravated it. I would not be surprised if they shut him down too.
I would not either.
Wide receivers, you got Tyreek Hill with the foot. It is projected that he will play on Thursday. He looked in bad.
He played the rest of this game with that, didn't he?
He was constantly being checked out and back in and checked out and back in.
He said that he woke up this morning and it was like he was in a lot of pain. Check back tomorrow for practice notes. So that one's gonna be huge on its practice.
Yeah,
status.
Tuesday and Wednesday
on
practice
Tuesday
notes
and
will be
gonna
big.
Be huge.
But yeah, he I saw him he looked like he was in a 10-round fight. He was just he looked wobbly and beat to shit, and it was not pretty. But he gutsed it out.
He killed it for you.
Yep. Cortland Sutton with a thigh injury.
Hopefully he can play.
And then Josh Doxson is in the concussion protocol. And then at tight end, Jordan Reed re-aggravated his foot issue that he'd been kind of fighting through all year. He may be done for the season.
Yeah, it could be. But props to Reed. He made it through most of the season healthy.
And unfortunately, not very productive.
Oop.
Yeah, I won't talk about it.
All right, let's talk about a couple guys you can add off the waiver wire.
Waiver wire.
I still love that drop so much.
And then shout out to whoever owns the rights for that for giving us a yet another copyright notice on that one. Josh Allen, for those of you who prefer your QBs.
What?
Oh, whenever we play that drop, we get hit with a copyright watch notice.
Oh, we should probably stop that then.
Whatever.
No, we should probably stop that then.
We should probably make a different one.
Oh, hungry eyes. So we'll just
Sing it ourselves.
Done that in a while.
Josh Allen is a good pickup, though, for those of you who prefer your quarterbacks to run instead of throw.
Yeah.
Justin Jackson, because it's possible there may be no Melvin Gordon or Austin Eckler in Week 15.
Newsome.
Garrett Newsome.
No, it's Dimitri. I think it's Dimitri Newsome.
Oh, Demetrius Newsome.
Yeah.
Elijah McGuire, if Crowell is out Week 15, that would actually lead to enough production to make him viable.
Yeah, I would think.
Kenneth Dixon has actually looked like he might be the best back in Baltimore.
That's a fun headache to own, right there.
You're using the wrong word.
I know what I said.
It is an addiction-causing headache. Chris Ivory, in case McCoy's injury is more than just day-to-day and ends up being week-to-week. And then Damian Williams, because Spencer Ware was a little banged up in this one. Anyone else to add on the running back front?
No.
All right. Two wide receivers who both get the same note here. Dante Pettis and Curtis Samuel of why are they still available? What else do they need to do for you?
Curtis Samuel needs to not be Curtis Samuel.
But he's been productive like six
He's
straight
the number
weeks.
2. Him and Moore has seen over 90% snaps. Dude.
I know.
It's not working out at all how we predicted, but we're wrong on this one, at least in terms of how they're running this offense right now.
We're wrong right now.
And he is
That's all
viable.
right
now, yeah.
Yep.
Deshaun Hamilton saw 69 snaps with Sanders done for the season.
I like him. I do.
And Tim Patrick, in case Sutton is injured long-term or in deeper leagues, maybe even just as a name to pick up. He is a rookie. There's no guarantee they necessarily have Sanders back next year, and they may need 3 new receivers.
You mean they already hit on one relatively unknown rookie?
Yep.
Yeah.
And Chris Conley with Watkins likely to end for the year. DeMarcus Robinson is also possibly worth a look as well. Just getting pieces of this offense, we're going to see significant snaps.
He outperformed him last week. I think the snaps are about near equal to
Robinson?
Yeah.
They were using Robinson a lot in the Tyreek Hill role. It was weird. Whenever Hill was off the field, they were trying to use Robinson in that spot.
He made the most of his opportunity. That's what you want to see.
I don't know how he didn't get more picked up when Olsen went out for the year, but Ian Thomas is like 20% owned, and he might be the real deal. He looked awesome in this game.
Picked him up everywhere.
Especially on a weak tight end market, go get him if he's not owned.
Yep.
And then on a similar note, Vernon Davis, now that Reed's likely done for the season.
Josh Johnson.
I don't care.
Have fun.
You get a tight end who's going to get 90+% of snaps. I'm kicking the tires.
I agree, though. I agree.
Agreed.
A couple defenses to take a look at. Bills versus the Lions, and then Seahawks at the 49ers were 2 lesser owned ones I'm considering. Lions at the Bills also possibly an option. All right, let's talk a couple cuts as we wrap up this episode.
Weekly cuts.
Starting at running back, Corey Clement, like done for the year. Actually, back to quarterback for a second. In case you didn't cut him when I said last week, Matthew Stafford is very cuttable.
Yep.
Yeah. And Jameis Winston probably.
With his schedule, Winston as
Ravens and Cowboys on the road.
Corey Clement, though, likely done for the year with the MCL sprain. He was kind of a fringe-owned player, but you can safely turn him off your rosters even in deep leagues. Any other running backs? I didn't really spot anybody else that jumped out at me.
I'm sure if we tried hard enough, we could think of some, but no.
Wide receiver, a couple guys who are not going to be back this year. Pierre Garçon, if you were still holding out hope he was going to come back, is done for the season. I think most of you probably cut bait weeks ago. Sammy Watkins likely done for the regular season, so he can be safely cut.
I got one more name to throw here. Devin Funchess.
Devin Funchess, who looks like he is the wide receiver 4, another good one to throw out.
Goof.
Traquan Smith, too many goose eggs is another one. Especially they're talking about bringing Ted Ginn back in the regular season.
Yeah.
Yep.
Tight end Jordan Reed, likely done for the season, and even if he wasn't, who cares? Couple defenses here. Chargers defense gets the Chiefs in Week 15, so if you're only holding one defense due to shallow benches, I would cut them. And then Steelers defense, who get the Saints and Patriots to close out the fantasy season.
And maybe the Saints too. They get Carolina next week, and then Pittsburgh Week 16. Carolina's a maybe.
Yeah,
It's tough though. Road game.
that's fringe enough that it's like a maybe hold, but not necessary. All right, just to preview rest of the week, we've done this. We're going to do the same we've done for the last, I believe, 3 weeks here. Extended start set on Wednesday, just to make sure we give you a bunch of names to get in your lineups to help get you that win through Week 15. Preview all the games Friday. Sunday we'll be back for the Q&A answer. Shout out to everyone who's been joining us for those segments. It's been a blast having 10 to 20 of you guys jumping in here and just throwing questions at us.
It's been a ton of fun.
Appreciate all of that. I'm most Sundays I'm struggling because we generally go out and have too much fun Saturday nights.
Unfortunately, I won't be here for the rest of the ones, but I'll be there in spirit while I work.
I think one of them I'm going to have to do from Minnesota, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
When's that?
That'll be the Week 16 one.
I'll be around for that.
But yeah, I'll probably bitch the two of us on a laptop then.
Yep.
But yeah, thank you so much for listening, guys. We're Beerfield Fantasy Football. You can find us at Beerfield FF on Twitter, Instagram, and Untapped. Beerfield Fantasy Football is YouTube. If you want to jump in and ask questions like you heard in this episode, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can also hit the
bell button
bell
for all
button
notifications.
for the notifications of when we go live. We usually try to do it about 6, but it depends on the day and how our schedules look. Individually, you got Dan Third to my right.
Yeah, 30 BFF. The stress is real.
Christopher Hopper calling in from St. Louis.
Yeah, Hop BFF with you, peace. Hey, final note here. I want to give a shout out to Scott Fish.
Yes.
Runner of Scott Fish Bowl Fantasy Cares. We called him out a little bit a couple shows ago for raising over $44,000 for Toys for Tots. He was actually named Person of the Year by The Athletic for the fantasy community. So big props to him. I can't think of a better person to receive that award.
I can't either. What he's done and what he's been doing and what he'll continue to do has been remarkable.
Yeah,
They had a note in the article, by the way, that he's upping the number of teams in Scott Fish Bowl again to 1,080, and that's probably going to be where it caps out at. And then that there's already 8,500 people on the list ready to get in,
including the 3 of us.
Yep.
And that is, I believe, at ScottFish24 is his handle, if I'm going off memory correctly.
Yes, but he's just been fantastic for the community. Does a lot of cool stuff, not just for Toys for Tots, but he's ran some domestic violence awareness leagues to raise money for that. FantasyCares.net is his website. Always some cool stuff going on over there. So,
and he's a member of Fantasy Football Weekly if you want to hear him on air.
Yep.
All right. Well, shout out Scott Fish. Thank you so much for listening, guys. We will be back Wednesday with our extended start sits, recap what happened Monday night between the Vikings and the Seahawks, preview the Thursday night game between the Chiefs and the Chargers. We'll look forward to seeing you guys then, and we'll catch you guys next time on Beerfield Fantasy Football.
See ya.
Peace. Later.
Beer.
Beerfield.